Alright Nintendo, we dropping the patch a little late for some reason, but I guess we have it here anyway. I'll just fix the 9.2 list I spend a week scripting. Anyway, patch 9.3 is here, and there's actually quite a lot of changes to go over. Without further ado, be sure to subscribe for more patch breakdowns whenever we get these at this point, and let's get started. So remember last patch when they buffed the range and projectile speed just a little bit with Splattershot and said that it was the benchmark and they might do similar for other weapons? Well, now we know which weapons they're going to be, and that's the Sploosh-O-Matic, Splattershot Jr., Aerospray, and Dapple Dualies. All of these got the exact same buff Splattershot has. Technically, all of these will be slightly lower because these are shorter range weapons, but for the most part I divide these picks into half of them that don't matter too much and half of them that do. On the half that don't is Sploosh and Aerospray. I think the Sploosh's combat range being a little bit further is great, and Aero will once again paint a little bit better. I think that's number 9 Aerospray painting buff, nice job. But for the most part, the main plus kit combinations of these weapons aren't quite strong enough in order to see use, though I do think they'll feel a lot more usable in the current meta. The two options that are more notable though are the Dapple Dualies and Splattershot. I think that Dapples have been pretty good as a Slayer option, seeing some decent tournament use, and being able to get a little bit more Reeve Slider as well as just have a bit more range is very important for that weapon. Outranging it is obviously its main weakness, and having a little bit extra will help a lot for it. As for Splattershot Jr., I think it's going to get a little too many bubbles because I thought it already did before, and now it'll do it even better. This also might make Splattershot Jr. a bit more of a decent fighter, which has kind of been its main problem right now. So we have to see how this plays out. Up next is the NZAP getting a slight ground RNG reduction, which will affect its RNG with Tactical Lure as well, of course, and a slight strafe speed increase. This is an ongoing attempt to make NZAP more competitive with Edit and Pencil, and I think this might work a little bit, but less because of this and more of what happens to Pencil later. For the most part, I think Zap's issues are closer to it cannot cycle Cooler fast enough because of its points for special, and the other weapons you would enable by running a Zap aren't super worth it. And I don't think that's really changing in this patch, but it will still be better. Splattershot Nova will have a third less jump RNG. Nice, but not going to change too much. And next up is a big buff to the Big Swig Roller. When I've talked about this weapon, remember how I said one of the main problems with it is that its vertical flick hitbox is a little bit small? Like, it actually has a really good vertical, it's just incredibly inconsistent to hit. Well, they fixed it. It's going to have an increased vertical flick hitbox size, which means it'll probably match that of other rollers. Will this be good enough for its C use, given the current kits it has are quite low right now? Probably not, but I do think the main weapon will feel significantly better and more consistent after this. Another weapon that I think might see a bit of use because of a buff though is Paintbrush. This weapon is getting a swing speed increase of roughly 2 frames, which is a pretty sizable kill time increase. I think that could allow a little bit more Pain and Pain Nouveau use, though I'm being a little bit optimistic here. The weapon is still realistically very slow, but I think being able to kill a little bit faster is very important given how long the windup is on this weapon. So it's really important that it's able to secure picks when it has the opportunity to. Next up, Mini Spotling and Heavy Spotling getting some similar buffs. Both of them are getting a total charge time reduction of 3 frames, while Heavy Spotling will also get a firing time duration increase of about 11 frames. Zimmy has been very close to being good for a bit, and in addition to Junior's buff, I think this one will help it keep up. It'll be painting a little bit more and have a bit of an easier time fighting, in general having less downtime via charging, which I think is going to help it out a lot. As for Heavy Spotling, we're getting a bit of a pattern here, but once again, I think the problem is less of the main weapon and more of a kit situation. Without a substantial Wavebreaker or Kraken buff, I really don't see Heavy being super worth using at the current time. I think its main weapon was already pretty solid, and if anything will be more so right now, but it's just not super worth it to have an anchor that's going to get a special this week. Splat Dualies is up next, getting a slight hitbox size increase when outside of turret mode, aka its standard fire. Not too much to say here, but it'll be a little bit easier to tag opponents with shots, which I think will help its fighting a little bit. Recycle Umbrella is getting 2 pretty big buffs. Its ink efficiency is going up, and its paint is going up. This basically means Recycle will have way more uptime, but most importantly, it'll get more of its special. Recycle does actually have 2 pretty useful specials for the weapon. It's kind of its only redeeming quality right now, and its paint is currently rather abysmal. So I think this could make a decent difference, though once again, I don't think it's going to be enough to see some competitive use. Anyway, next up, we're finally at the nerfs. Snipe Rider is getting a slightly reduced pain output. What does this mean exactly? Well, last time it got a slightly reduced pain output, it was nerfed by about 1 point per shot. So if I'm gonna take a shot in the dark, it's gonna be nerfed by 1 point per shot in terms of horizontal paint once again. And later down this list, it also gets 220p. Currently, edit is very even, if not slightly better than pencil, but pencil is more common. This might change that though. I still think pencil is going to be good, and if anything, I think we've reached the point where it doesn't need any more nerfs. I think anything beyond this point is going to be overkill. The weapon might drop down a little bit, but I still think Sniper Rider comps are going to fare much better with zap ones. Though at this point, heavy edit spalling is absolutely the better cooler option, and I do think pencil having a bit lower cooler output is a nice way to balance it out, even if I'd rather them do something like have zap be cheaper instead. That's not the only nerf though, because Mint also got a change, having less pain output on its normal slashes by 12% and having a 2-frame long charge slash when you lunge with it. This does not affect the normal charge slash. Now, I think these nerfs are a little bit overkill. I'd prefer if they did one, but not both. Either tone down its dash slash a bit or tone down its flexibility. That said, I still think Mint is gonna be fine. It's still a very strong main weapon, sharking is still gonna be effective without the dash, and the dash will still have its use cases, and the pain output is still gonna be good enough to pass up most other midline options. That said, like with Pen, I hope this is the end of the nerfs here. Next up are the special changes. We have 2 buffs and 1 nerf. Let's start with the best news of this patch, and it's to Ultra Stamp. Stamp is getting a change to its throw mode. It has 3 hitboxes currently, 220, a medium that does 60, and an outside that does 30. Now, there will only be 2 hitboxes. The medium hitbox is now a 220 hit across the board, while the outside hitbox is being increased from 30 to 60. Outside hit of Stamp throw is pretty large, which means now it's going to be dealing over half your health, working with a lot of other options, while the throw will also have a higher likelihood of killing or breaking objects, given again 220 damage. In addition to that, in the bug fixes, they mentioned that Stamp's swinging mode will be a little bit more consistent with how it interacts with opponents, meaning potentially, we don't know for sure, it'll tank a little bit better from the front. Maybe. If it is more consistent, massive buff to Stamp. If it's not, still a really good one. Stamp throw has been the consistent part of the special, and you just have more of a reason to play for it now. So I think that's good. Now, I will briefly mention that some people have realized that, wow, that one-shot hitbox is going to be quite large, the same as Zooka's indirect, and the 60 hitbox is also a bit large. Is that going to be a problem? Will it be annoying? For sure. Will it be broken? Probably not. Stamp throw notably has much less shot velocity when it's traveling, it's only 1 shot, and most importantly, does not have any of Zooka's jank programming, meaning, you know, cover will probably actually work against it. Triple Splashdown paints 11% more. I mean, sure, it's a positive change. I don't think it's enough to make it zones cheese or anything, especially considering you can just shoot them down, but not the most impactful change in the world. We'll take it though. The biggest one, though, is to try Zooka. Remember how Ultra Stamp had 3 hitboxes and it got reduced to 2? They kind of did the opposite here. Try Zooka now has 2 separate hitboxes on its outside hit. Instead of being 1 giant 53 damage radius, it'll have an inner hit that stays at 53, but the rest of it will be changed to doing 35 damage. That's right, no more BS random dying to a 2-shot bazooka over a wall. If that happens, then they actually aimed at you this time. Wow, almost like that's how it always should have been. In addition to that, it looks like the devs wanted to nerf Zooka even further though, because its duration is also being reduced by 30 frames. Though special power-up's duration increase will still reach where it was before, like always. This is the most impactful nerf of this patch by far. Zooka will still be a good special, but I think it was already a little bit inconsistent, and these changes are going to make it a lot harder. That being said, good. Zooka should have been a lot harder given the insane playmaking power of it, and I think we're finally reaching the point where Zooka isn't too extreme. The startup is really the only annoying thing left of this special, and even then, at least it has to aim at you now. So, good job. Zooka's fixed. Points for special run down. Let's make this fast. Octobrush will get Zipcaster slightly faster, and parry Triple Splashdown slightly faster, Dowser Whale faster, and Recycle Triple Splashdown faster. None of these are drastic changes, with the most notable being Octobrush getting its Zipcaster faster, but all of them are nice to see. On the nerf side, S-Blast is going to 200p for Booyah Bomb. Yeah, that's not exactly unexpected here. I think it's fine though. They might be looking at this weapon more given its added popularity, and this is what happened to Mint before its nerfs, but I'm hopeful that Blast won't be hit as hard. It's a good change to make sure it's kept in check and isn't able to keep itself alive too much, while still keeping most of the main weapon power the same. Finally, Splatfest is having some stage changes. Cool. So I think my overall thoughts on this patch can be summed up by this image from Shadowwind, which has the caption, "The best weapons are worse, still the best. The worst weapons are better, still the worst." Most of this patch's changes felt like it was adjusting the very lower half and the very upper half to be closer together. But I don't think that's necessarily what we needed. I think the upper half is fine. I think the problem is a lot of middling weapons that need some actual buffs. Instead, we got a lot of low tier weapons getting some decent buffs, all things considered, but nowhere near enough for them to see use. Options like Heavy Splatling still need a better special. Zap needs more anchors to enable. Recyclebrella is still very undertuned of a main weapon with a poor kit. And the list goes on. But I think that's half the patch. There's also some options that are really good. I think the Zinc buffs are interesting, the Junior buffs are gonna be impactful even if I think it's the wrong weapon to buff here. The Zap, Dually, and Dapple changes are still good, Stamp is very exciting, and I honestly do like all the nerfs they did this patch. I think that half of these are going to be things that aren't going to be too noticeable but at least improves the bottom end, and the other half are going to be somewhat impactful at balancing the game. But compared to 9.2, I don't think there's going to be as interesting developments upward. Again, unless if the bug fix for Ultra Stamp really means something. Then we'll be seeing some Stamp weapons for sure. But we'll have to wait and see. For now though, I still do think it's a positive patch more than a negative one. None of the changes here are really bad in any way, and for the most part I do still think this will help keep the game interesting and hasn't toned down the top level of weapons enough to really be mitigating main weapon power. So that's all my thoughts. Thanks for watching.